Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, an intentional space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I am Beth Syverson. I'm an adoptive mom of a courageous 19-year-old son, Joey, who I'm very happy to say is here with us for this episode. Hey, Joe.
Hi.
Joey has been struggling, but he is working very hard to find his path. And I have also been struggling, isn't everybody? And I am walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. We are committed to helping anyone touched by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. Today's guest is Meggin Nam Holtz, an intercountry, interracial adoptee and adoption therapist. Nam is a Korean adoptee adopted to the U.S. as an infant. She has been involved in adoption advocacy, awareness, and support for over a decade. Her award-winning documentary film, Found in Korea, about birth search, country of origin travel, identity, and adoption, was created to serve as a catalyst for conversations about adoption among youth and adults. Nam holds a master's of social work and is currently working in a private practice with adopted people and their families. And she also continues macro work towards adoption reform and education as a public speaker and researcher. So welcome to Unraveling Adoption, Nam, and I'm so glad Joy's here with us today since you have such a heart for helping young adoptees. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Beth. I'm so glad Joey's here too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's start just by hearing your adoption story, just a summary of kind of your data facts. How old were you? That kind of thing.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I was an infant adoptee from South Korea in 1976. I was 6 months old or around there because I was an assigned birth date. I was adopted into a family who had two biological children. They were white. And then we adopted a younger brother also from Korea later when I was almost 5. I grew up, in the northern suburbs of Chicago, very white neighborhood, very little connection with other Koreans, a little bit of connection with other adoptees, just, in those small groups. But it was a time when a lot of people didn't know how to talk about adoption the way they do now. Mm-hmm. And that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Well, I want to mention, because I was loving it so much. In your film, you have a bunch of clips of you dancing, and you are a professional dancer. I don't know if you still are, but are you always when you're a dancer? I know.
I think once you're a dancer, you're always a dancer.
Always a dancer.
I think so, but I don't dance professionally anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you. It was,
delightful.
I think dance was an important part of me in terms of my regulation and my ability to communicate nonverbal emotions as growing up, which was really important.
I bet. Joey and I are both musicians, and we both have said many times how music has saved our lives.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like, we're not kidding. We're not.
Literally saved your life. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just a saying.
It's not.
No, we need something besides words and reality to get us through. So
100%.
Yeah. So you were like on Broadway as a ballerina. Yeah.
I was on Broadway. Actually, I was singing and dancing on Broadway.
Singing and dancing. Yeah. Because you have to always do both, I suppose, on Broadway. Yeah. That was very, very impressive. And I know there's not too many people that can say that they have sung and danced on Broadway. So bravo.
Thanks.
And did you ever get into Korean dance, or did it ever help you identify with your culture at all? Or was it Western ballet kind of thing?
I didn't. I studied modern and ballet and jazz and tiny bit of tap, although it was terrible. And I did not ever study Korean dance or Korean drumming. I'm super interested in it. I love watching it. I love listening to it. But no, I never got into it. I think there was a little bit of an aversion pushback when I was young to get really, really involved in Korean stuff because I was scared.
Oh, okay.
Because that's a whole nother conversation. But no, I never had Korean dancing or influence in that part of my life. But I think another good point about dance in general and music is that as an Asian person, it's more overlooked than, let's say, acting in terms of your race. So I think I had an easier time finding my path in the music and dance world.
They tend to be more open-minded, for all sorts of things, gender and all sorts of differences. That's kind of, artists thrive on difference and uniqueness. So that's great. Mm-hmm. I noticed one of the shows you were in on Broadway was The King and I, which is about modern day Thailand.
Well, kind of modern.
Yeah.
Not really modern anymore.
How was that to be an Asian dancer in a kind of Asian-ish production?
Oh, I will say I have my love-hate relationship with the King and I in general,
Uh-huh.
but I would say being a dancer in the King and I and singer in the King and I found myself in a room full of Asian women for the very first time in my life. That was overwhelming in itself.
Uh-huh.
A lot of guessing about, did I get here on talent or how I looked?
Oh, wow.
I had to do a lot of work on
Never
that.
thought about that.
And then also they pulled me aside and they were like, your makeup is terrible. Like I was doing my makeup like a white person. I didn't know better. So the girls pulled me aside and taught me how to do my makeup that was fitting for my eyes, fitting for my face.
Oh, interesting.
Everything that my skin tone. And I really appreciated that. But that's something that people don't really think about.
Yeah, no.
I never thought about that.
And so that was a really amazing experience. And, you know, this community of really talented, professional, thriving Asian women working on Broadway was a really great thing for me to be around.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet that you felt at home, and I can't imagine how wonderful that must have been.
Well, I both felt at home and I both felt alienated at the same time because I was for the first time in an Asian community it was a mix. It was a mix of all different types of Asians.
Okay.
And but I was, you know, someone who hadn't been in that environment before. I had been in white spaces.
Yeah, and I bet most, if not all, of the other Asian women in the cast were raised in Asian families, and
there was one other adoptee.
Oh, wow.
There was one other adoptee. Okay,
another adoptee.
Did you guys collaborate?
We talked. We were friendly, but you know, it's different on Broadway than on tour because on Broadway everyone has their own lives and goes back. There's not so much hang like on tour. Yeah. There's like downtime and hang.
You're stuck together,
so it's different.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Joey was raised in a half white, half Japanese household for his early years and went to a very, very white school. So I bet Joey can commiserate with you a bit about growing up in an all white space in school and stuff. Yeah. Do you want to say anything about that, Joe?
The feeling of alienation and the feeling of other is definitely prominent when you feel minority, I guess, when you're the only Asian in probably mainly 90%, I feel it was white.
Yeah. Yeah, your first school definitely was.
Yeah, and I feel like I was like, no, there's probably one other minority or two, but I had this one point of coming home and I was like, I wish I had blonde hair. I wish I was white. I wish I had blue eyes, because that feeling of like not feeling comfortable in your own skin, you want to be something else. And that's the experience I had.
Yeah.
That was sad. I remember that. And I totally failed at that because I said, oh no, I wish I had your dark hair and your darker skin and you're perfect the way you are. And I didn't recognize what you were saying. You were saying, I feel alienated and I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. I'm like, no, you're great. So I sort of, I minimized your experiences.
No, it's okay.
Then you moved to a different school halfway through high school, and it was a lot of Vietnamese people and other Asian people. And I bet that felt like the way Nam felt when she was in that dressing room full of other Asian women.
Yes, I don't know, because that school was very competitive.
Oh, okay.
Not stereotypical, but like because it just happened to be very get good grades, go to college, go to really good colleges like UCLA, USC. So it was like, it didn't help that there's a lot of Vietnamese.
There's a lot of Vietnamese there. Yeah.
And it felt like because I like looked like a drug addict and I didn't fit into that stereotypical like Asian, I was left in like this void of not being white, not being a good Asian person. So I was just this drug addict, not like conformative person that no one cared about, it felt like.
Super alienating.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that like for you, Nam, growing up in a white household? And then I don't know if your parents, you know, stereotypically Korean, Chinese parents tend to be very kind of high demand. What do they call it? The tiger mom kind of situation. Was your family like that? Or did you know other Asians that had that?
I didn't know that many other Asians.
Oh, okay.
But in high school, my family really valued education and valued the arts as well. And they let me do what I was good at.
You thrived in that, obviously.
They let me do what I wanted, you know, which is that's a gift in itself. But to answer the first question, just kind of going back to Joey's experience as well, growing up, I had this floor length mirror and I collected buttons. This is like early 80s, and I put the buttons all around the top of the mirror, and I have some stickers and stuff like that. And I didn't realize till years later in therapy that I had blocked out my face. So you could see me from like here down. So I could see if I looked cute in the outfit, you could see everything, but you couldn't see my face. And I didn't want to have to look and be reminded every time I looked in the mirror that I didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes, that I didn't look like that, like what you were talking about, Joey. And it was a very subconscious move on my part.
Yeah. But then went through therapy, you kind of came up and you figured out years later that that's what that was. That's incredible, actually.
Yeah. So that's how it was for me growing up. It was very subversive.
Yeah.
I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but I don't really know how, I don't know the words.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, it seems like a big stretch to go from there to making a film about your reunion. What happened to being completely cut off, to your feelings about being Asian, to wanting to go to Korea? Tell me the path.
Good question. I had always been curious about birth family. I always was allowed to talk about it and allowed to have questions and allowed to wonder. It was hard to talk about it and it was hard to wonder aloud. So I did most of it by myself. And at one point, my sister got pregnant and I was allowed and asked to help her with the birth. So I was present for the birth of her daughter. And then I was also present for the birth of her son. But that birth, being in that room, just like blew me away and brought me down to the fact that every single human is born. We're all born. Yeah. And it brought me back to thinking what was happening at my birth.
Yeah.
Who was in the room? Who wasn't in the room? I wrote a poem, Who Cut My Umbilical Cord?
Wow.
I started really thinking about the circumstances of my own birth in a new way. And I decided that I was ready and interested in doing a birth search. It was a big, it wasn't like snap, here it is. It was a process. And I definitely had professional help to kind of wade through all of that. But at the same time, I was transitioning from being an onstage performer to more film and TV on screen. And so I was surrounded by people who knew that world more, and I was encouraged to document it in that way.
Wow.
So that all kind of collided at the same time.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So you were an actor, but were you a filmmaker before you decided to make your own documentary?
I was not. And if I had known how hard it is, I might not have done it.
I bet. Because it's way more than just putting a camera on a tripod. You got to do all this stuff afterwards, right? Is that the hardest part or the before part?
Well, it's all hard. All of it's hard. It's all hard. And I didn't know all the aspects. I was very ignorant. And luckily I had people along the way that supported me, but I was wearing about 100 different hats, quite literally, in the making of this film. And it was a 9-year birth. Let's just say that.
Wow.
So you went to Korea in 2010, right? And that's what you documented. And then it came out in 2019.
Yes.
And while I was watching it, because I knew I was going to be seeing you in a couple of days to talk about this, I was like, man, she's going through all of this kind of just emotional turmoil and, stuff. And you were by yourself, except for whoever's behind the camera. I don't know who that was, but you seemed to be by yourself in a foreign country, not knowing the language, except for a few words. And how did you manage being able to manage the camera, and where should we go next? And also all the emotional stuff.
I'll tell you, it was not easy.
I'm sure.
If you could film the not filmed parts, it'd be kind of a whole nother documentary.
It's Inception.
I think that'd be really
because
cool.
I lost it. I lost it many times. And sometimes I'd be like, I'm going to cry. Can you turn the camera on? Can you please? And it was just that type of, I had to be that type of director and that type of awareness. And my on-screen training helped me for that. I could help frame it. I could help say, oh yeah, this is coming up. Please turn the camera on. Please put my mic on. All that stuff. Yeah. But it was not easy. And I think I took one day off in the 21 days we were there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we traveled with huge back then, had huge 4 terabyte gig, drives to like
Oh,
upload
wow.
drives every single night. We'd make backups and upload all the stuff.
Oh.
Like it was nonstop work.
Wow. You must have just been exhausted in all the ways when you were done with that trip.
All the ways.
And there was some lovely, lovely things that happened in that film. I don't know if you want to tell what you found. Maybe I shouldn't say anything about that. So they have to go watch the film.
Maybe.
Well, let's just say you didn't find everything that you wanted.
No, but I found so much. And I guess the biggest takeaway that I do like to share with people, even if you've seen it or not, is that some people, when they plan to visit country of origin, they feel pressure from whoever, themselves or other people, that they have to do certain things. And what I will say is being in a space that you're from is a relationship in itself. It is an experience in itself that is incredibly undescribable. And I think valuable. Maybe other people won't think that, but that was my experience. And so I encourage people, if they are curious and they want to go and they don't want to do a full burst search, but just even visit a space, it's pretty filled with resonance.
Wow.
Yeah. The scene of you in the water in the city where you were born, or the island, that was a really, really moving scene. And I know it was one of your bucket list things you wanted to get to on that trip. And you were there and tossing the water around. It's just like, I could sense the deep connection you had with that space.
Yeah.
With that water, with your feet on the sand,
It was a really special moment. And, I'm not a morning person, but we wanted to get up early and be there before anyone got there. And we did it and we got the shot. And afterwards, the cameras were off. I went all the way in.
Oh, did you?
I went all the way in the water. The cameras were no longer running and I didn't have to worry about my mic or anything like that. So I took everything. I was like, I'm going in.
Like a baptism.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Oh, it was a beautiful film. And it was,
thank you.
I think you told me you wrote it so young people could kind of have something to relate to, young adoptees.
Absolutely.
It wasn't patronizing or anything to young people, but it was very accessible and it wasn't like super deep and like rough and intense.
That was the point.
Yeah. It was something I totally could watch with Joey without worrying that he would, go get really, really sad afterwards. It was very hopeful. It was very positive, as positive as it could be, without getting everything you wanted. And I just really think it's definitely a great film in the space to fit that niche.
Thank you.
And it's great for everyone to watch, not just kids. I loved it. My wife and I watched it and we just loved it so much.
Thanks for watching.
Oh, yeah.
I love talking about the reasons why I made it.
Yeah.
That's what kept me going those 9 years.
Yeah. I bet that post-production was a drag sometimes and you were like, ugh, what was it that kept you going?
Well, I had this drive that I wanted to make something that would open up conversation about adoption for all ages. And that's missing. I think it's sorely missing in our society. I think it's sorely missing in our world. And I wanted it to be like a family film so families could watch it together. I wanted it to be kind of like The Simpsons. You get it on every level.
So there's layers.
So I wanted to create something like that. And I wanted something that had representation of an adopted person as the central figure. I wanted a female of color as the central figure. This is sorely, it's changing, but coming from the world of film and TV, I was like, this is frustrating that someone that looks like me is not going to ever be the main character. Yeah. This is obviously changing now, slowly. Good. Yay. Yeah. But it was, back in 2010, I was like, no, I got to create something that shows that we can be the main character because representation really matters. And that goes back to that feeling of like wanting blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yeah.
Because we don't see that representation. Definitely. Right. So, and then opening the door was a number 2. And then the third one is I felt like it would be a form of early intervention to be able to have these conversations. Because if you're able to shake up that Coke bottle and like twist off the lid, just let a little bit out, it's a safer way to start dealing with some of the many, 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 many questions and losses that are associated with adoption that no one's talking about.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
It seems like a safe way. Like I said, it's not so intense and, because it can, in the space, it can get very intense. And it's a great way, like a first step maybe for somebody or a kid.
Like it's a little toe dip into this. And it's, I think people at all quote unquote levels of understanding adoption stuff can watch it and view it and get what they want out of it. But I think I made it for largely the audience who hasn't really started that work.
Well, thank you for making that film, and everybody go watch it. Found in Korea. You can just rent it on Vimeo anytime. Do you ever do screenings of it in person?
I have. I did the whole film festival circuit, did really well. And then I had a couple of screenings in person with Q&As. I've done it. If people are interested in having that happen, contact me.
Okay. If you want to, give her a call. For sure. For sure. It's so fun to watch films in the same space as other people. I mean, we sort of forgot how to do that in COVID. And your film came out in 2019 and then COVID happened. Did you get your film festivals before then?
I got a good amount of film festival run. And then the one that I was going to fly out because it was the featured film at the Disorient Film Festival on the West Coast. And I didn't get to go. Yeah. Yeah.
Drat.
It was sad. So yeah, it got interrupted, but I will say I'm grateful for the ones we did get in.
Okay. So you filmed that in 2010, came out in 2019. Has anything changed regarding finding any more of your relatives?
That's a funny question. It's a loaded question. I got notification one day in 2018 that someone thought they had found some people. And I went through a long time thinking that they had connected. And I became friends with this group of people. And then I did a hair sample DNA test and it ended up not being them. So there was like a wild month period where I really thought I had connected with this whole group of people. And then it was very disappointing. But I think I have a very unique experience in that because identity wise, it was a wild thing to always live your life thinking one thing. And then, this shift happens and all these things happen that I had no idea would happen. So I think it's a great perspective to have. There's lots of changes. I mean, the film was filmed in 2010. I've learned a lot more about adoption since. I've changed a lot. I've grown a lot. Even like some terminology, I'm like, oh, I would not have edited that that way now. But, I think that's part of the beauty of when you're involved in the adoption community, is just acknowledging that things are changing and shifting.
They're shifting all the time, for sure. 2010 is a long time ago in the whole scheme of things, right?
It is.
Now, I'm an adoptive parent, so I'm watching your parents like a hawk. What are they doing? How are they dealing with this? And they seem like lovely, lovely, lovely people. And they seemed a little naive about adoption. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely true. And, the more I learn, the more I share with them. And I do feel like I'm in the minority in terms of having a family that will let me share what I learned and that they'll be open to it and that they say, hey, we were so naive.
Yeah.
Hey, we didn't know what we were doing. Okay. Wow. How could we have made that mistake? They don't have any ego or shame about saying, wow, we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that so much. I have come to so many realizations and just wishing I had known, and then dealing in therapy with, you can't know what you don't know. And we all were doing our best. And God, I know I messed up a whole bunch of stuff with Joe. I'm so sorry, Joe. I've told you many times.
It's okay.
But yeah, we just know what we know at the time. And your film is a snapshot of what you all knew in 2010.
Exactly.
And I bet when you came home from that trip, everything kind of shifted for you. And then as you went into your therapy practice and started really digging into the adoption world deeper, I bet the kaleidoscope shifts.
It did.
A lot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I know dancers don't dance probably for their whole life. That's kind of a short-term career in a lot of ways, right?
For some.
Did you always know you were going to do something afterwards, or?
I did not. I did not know what I was going to do afterwards. I ran into a bunch of injuries, so I had to stop.
Oh, okay. Okay. Shoot.
A little earlier than I wanted to.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't know. When I started getting involved in adoptee mentorship and going to conferences and stuff like that, I realized, wow, there are so many adoptees overrepresented in mental health and substance use areas that I feel overwhelmed. I feel like this is a place I could make a difference. I have a very unique relationship to this particular topic and perspective. And so I became really interested in learning how to support adopted people. And I went back to school for it.
So did you have a bachelor's already?
I had a bachelor's in dance. I did BFA.
In dance. Yeah. I have a BM, Bachelor of Music, a nice acronym for that. Yeah. But it's not a very broad degree, but they took that and you could get a master's degree on top of that for your master's of social work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, good.
They did. Absolutely.
How long did that take you?
I went to Hunter Silverman School of Social Work, and it was a 2-year program, and I ended at the beginning of COVID. So it was wild.
Okay. So you went right into online therapy.
I went right in. Exactly. Well, I had to take my license and then do that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Many steps.
Wow. So it sounds like you did the teen mentoring thing was your first foray into adoption land.
Adoptee specific work.
Who hooked you into that?
Actually, April Dinwoody gave me a call and said, I think you'd be great for this. So I showed up, and it was my first time in a room of all adopted people, actually.
Oh, wow.
And that was also really intense.
I bet.
Because it was a program, unfortunately it's dissolved now, but it was all together now. And it was a program designed for the entire family spectrum. It was parents would meet at one point in one room. The teens mentored the 5 to 10-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
And then the 11 to 13-year-olds had their own group, the tweens.
Oh.
So it was like everyone met at the same time in the same building, different rooms.
Oh.
And then everyone kind of came together for like a 10-minute check-in at some point. But it was a really fabulous. It was really fabulous. And I loved being the teen mentor facilitator is what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I realized teens and young people are dealing with some really serious stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
for sure.
I mean, it's not like I didn't know that before, but it was like in my face. So
yeah, seeing a bunch of them in a row.
So I was like, I like this group. I would like to better support them, but I need to get professionally trained.
Yeah, because teen mentorship is probably not a whole career path in itself. It's probably just like a couple of hours a week and that's it, right?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of planning outside of the actual stuff, but I would actually see the teens face to face maybe 5 hours a month at that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, I can't remember how often we met, but we did group outings, just the teens too. But
yeah. Joe, you went to a couple of adoption groups before COVID hit and then it all came to a halt. But what was that like for you the first time you went to an all adoptee teen group?
It felt overwhelming. I don't really remember too much, to be honest with you.
Yeah. You were having a rough time back then anyway.
Yeah. I wasn't really conscious for that part of my life, it feels like. But I guess now that I think of it, if I was doing it, it would have felt really welcoming and home. But I just wasn't available emotionally to accept that right then.
Yeah, that's tough. I've been trying to get Joey to go to one of these online adoptee groups. And I don't know, I think you want to, but then something's stopping you. I bet it must take a lot of vulnerability or openness to step into those spaces.
I mean, I would rather do just an actual in-person, but that's harder to find now.
Yeah. In-person is hard. There's a lot of them online.
I would rather meet someone and shake their hand, and
in person.
So like you can then build a relationship, because I am horrible at texting or emailing or getting on Zoom sometimes. So like if I can just meet this person and have a conversation and then maybe even talk to them outside, then that'd be fine. But the online is another barrier for me.
That makes sense. Nam, you said that Altogether now is defunct now after COVID. Is there anything that you know for kids and youth that's going on that people listening could grab onto?
Well, I know Angela Tucker is doing a mentorship group.
Oh yeah, she does have a mentorship group. I'll link that in the notes, everybody.
And a couple of the agencies have some meetups that are run by adoptees. I think Spence Chapin has an online adoptee group that meets. I know PACT has a bunch of support groups that meet.
I'll put the PACT groups.
Yeah, as I think of stuff, I'll come up with it. But I think it's a very sorely needed, like the in-person thing is so needed.
In person.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work. And that's why, you need to have someone run it in a responsible way. It's a lot more work than just the volunteers that usually have been involved. It's a lot of work.
Yes, that makes sense.
We recently had an in-person screening of Autumn's film, The Reckoning with the Primal Wound documentary. And it was amazing having 40 people in a room together. It's like, whoa, the energy was so different, and just so necessary. Like they would not leave. It took forever to clear the room because they just kept talking and talking.
So people are longing for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll list a bunch of these resources in the notes because I know adoptees all over are looking for these connection points. So that's amazing.
I think one of the things that's daunting about adoptee only spaces though is we're like, oh, let's recognize we need a space. That's awesome. That's really great. But adoptees are not a monolith, and there are so many different types of adoption. There are so many different variants. And within that, it gets a little funky, I think. And that's a reality that it's not really talked about that much. Kind of uncomfortable to talk about it. But I like to talk about uncomfortable things. So, so I think that same race, transracial is just one huge right there.
That's huge. Yeah. Just two big buckets right there.
Adopted from foster care at an older age versus infancy. Huge. You know, like this stuff needs to be acknowledged. Yeah. Because there's differences.
And just because you're adopted doesn't mean you'll be best friends. You know, you might not like the people.
Right. Exactly. Just because you're adopted and they're connected in that way, shape, and form.
Yeah, that's your one thing that you're the same about, but there's so many other things. So
it's wild.
Exactly.
So now you've got your MSW, and are you primarily doing individual therapy?
I do. I have run a few groups. Groups, as I said, they're a lot of work. It's a lot of coordinating. I love the group dynamic. I love the openness and things that people learn from each other in a group. And I'm open to doing more group work. But yes, right now I'm doing work with individuals and families. So sometimes families, it's not uncommon for me to meet with, say, if I'm working with like a 20-something-year-old, to have the family come in as well for a couple sessions. Okay. It's not uncommon at all, because I think it helps the communication. It helps the relationship, which is my whole point of why I'm there. Right. Yeah. And I also work with some families with young kids. So obviously I'm going to be working with the parents as well.
Yeah. I was struck by when you were talking about Altogether Now that they had 5 to 10-year-olds. That's amazing, because, you know, they know they're adopted, and there's so few resources for that age group. I hardly hear of it.
That's why I made my film.
Yes, exactly.
I want it, I think, and I'm sure Joey can talk more about this too, is that, you know, kids have stuff to say about adoption. They have stuff to say, period. And our society does not listen to them as much as we should. We don't give them as much credit. And so that's one of my big things, is listen to the kids, listen to the youth. They have stuff to say. It's important. And they're living in another world than we grew up in. So you're experiencing things that we didn't experience, and we can learn from you.
For sure.
So that is one of my biggest things. I don't know, Joey, if you want to say more about that. But
yeah, I mean, I do guess the idea that there's a whole another generation that is learning things, have different knowledge of things, may be the same exact thing, but just different understanding, different point of view, that can bring either a better society or something like that. It just, for some reason, it comes with, like, my dad is very much like that. Oh, Joey, you need to get a job or something. And then that validates me as being an adult. So then I can have a word, and like having money or something, you being adult. So then you can have a word in society. No, you're a human being. You should have a word 100% of the time in society. Doesn't that seem natural? It's very unfair to the youth, I think. And I don't know how to change that. That's what my question is, how to change that.
Good question. I guess it's the adults' job to listen more.
Yeah, just listen.
Yeah, I guess. And then us to speak up.
Yeah.
And I think your generation, Joy, you guys, especially living through COVID and everything, you guys think out of the box way better than we did. Yeah. My generation, I'm older than Nam, but we were all on one path. We are on this railroad track. Everybody does this. You guys are much freer.
And it's technology too. Yeah. We grew up faster.
Yeah, and it's changing so much.
Our knowledge of things is a little different.
For sure.
That, like I was saying, we understand technology a little bit different than the last generations, because it's just been available to us.
Yeah.
And it's weird understanding a 10-year difference in age or something, someone doesn't understand how to use a phone, basically, or a 20-year difference is a little different.
Yeah.
That shows.
Yeah, like I spell everything out. I use punctuation when I text.
Yeah, and then also it's abbreviation.
Yeah. It's like as short as possible.
It's just an emoji. Just go.
Yeah.
Yeah. There. And then we understand it. And it's a very weird understanding.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And our brains are malleable. So yeah, maybe you're developing different paths and routes than ours, than our brains.
Our neural pathways are just taking different paths, I guess. Going left instead of right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how society works. And that's just as a teen, you know, how you're a teen and you're always combating society. That's what it feels like at this moment, is I'm the world's against me, or the world's against my generation right now. That's where we have to step up.
I'm with you, Joey. I'm with you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I bet it feels like that sometimes.
Yeah.
What can we do? And Nam and Joey both can answer this, because Nam from a professional point of view and from being a youth at one point, and Joe from your lived experience as a youth now. What can we do better as adoptive parents and community members, teachers, therapists, doctors, to better take care of our adopted teens and kids? What do you need that we're not giving you?
Joey, do you want to go first? Or Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to like what we were saying, a voice, not just a voice from the adoptive parents, like, oh, our kid is feeling this. They told us this. Let that kid explain how they're feeling, and then take it as it is, because they know the best. Yeah.
So hearing actually from the kid. So giving kids voice, credence, and taking it seriously.
Validation.
Super important. I love that word. What do you think, Nam, from your experience personally and watching your clients?
I love this question. I think one of the biggest things we can do is take the initiative to learn from all of the resources that are out there. There are so many things out there. It's abundant. It's more than I can access in my lifetime, probably. There are so many resources, and it shouldn't be the adopted person's job to educate the society and the parents about the experience of being an adopted person. If you just do it yourself and take it upon yourself and recognize the importance of doing it, I think that would be a huge service to adopted youth. And, there's like a hashtag you can follow, adoptee voices. Like they make it easy.
Nice. Okay. The kids made a hashtag.
And adult adoptees now are speaking out about their experiences. There's so many resources to listen and read. However you want to take in content, you have all of these choices.
Oh, there's so many ways.
Exactly. So, I mean, those people listening right now, you're doing it. You're doing a good job. You're listening. You're taking the initiative to listen to people with lived experience. And that's part of it. But you can do more. That's what it is. And recognize the need and the importance of doing so.
Yeah. Even that first step.
And not relying on our kids or other adopted people to take us by the hand and lead us.
Right.
It's kind of like in the anti-racism world, I hear Black people saying, white people quit asking us how to do this.
Right.
We're the ones that are suffering here. You guys figure it out and help each other.
Right.
So I hear you. And I think that adoptive parents, there's so many resources out there, and I'm here to help adoptive parents find those resources and be a resource for adoptive parents as best as I can. And
that's great.
And we'll all help each other and make it better for adoptees, because I know it must be very, very difficult just on the regular.
It is. And I would say there's one more thing that professionals and adoptive parents and other people that just want to be allies can do, is just start talking and speaking up against the most common narrative that adoption is just gains and positive.
Yes.
Just start speaking up about the fact that adoption also incurs incredible loss. And that recognition is missing in today's conversation.
Yes.
And so I think that is a huge part of being an ally, is just saying, hey, the story doesn't start here.
Yeah. It's not all one thing or another. It's both. It's very, very complex.
Yes. Adoption is, the word is about that event, but there's a life that was lived beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a family beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a womb beforehand.
So important.
All of that is so important, and people don't really talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Goes deeper than people think.
Well, we better wrap up. Nam, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about? Or
no, I think this has been great.
Yes.
I'm really grateful to be able to talk with you both.
Well, thank you. If people wanted to watch your film or find you and ask you a question or hire you as a therapist, how would they find you?
My film is on Vimeo, so you can just search Found in Korea on Vimeo. I have an Instagram page, Found in Korea Film. There's also a Facebook page, Found in Korea. You can find all those online. I do answer messages eventually. It takes me a while because I do get a lot. But also in terms of, I kind of separate the film and the therapy part. So I have a website for my therapy that's adoptioninformed.com.
Okay.
And there you can find my email on that as well.
Okay. I'll put all those links in the notes so people can go find you. Well, thank you, Nam, for doing all the work you're doing and for bringing such light into the world with your dance and your music and your film and your therapy. And you're doing amazing things. And I'm just really happy to know you.
I'm happy to know you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, yes. And Joe, I'm glad to have you back on the pod today. It's great having you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully we'll hear more of Joe as the time goes on. So everybody, after you go find Nam, go find Unraveling Adoption. Our website is unravelingadoption.com. Find us on Facebook and YouTube. Information is on our website if you're an adoptive parent. I have coaching groups and I do individual coaching as well for adoptive parents. And we have a lot of resources. There's a bunch of stuff for free. So look me up there. I would love to help adoptive parents out. And if you are interested in supporting us so we can maintain this commercial-free podcast, we do have a Patreon account, patreon.com/unravelingadoption. Well, thanks again, Nam and Joy, for joining me in this conversation. I've loved it very much. And thank you all for listening. And Nam, Joey, and I want you all to stay safe.